On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is TalkTV.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joan Collins, and I am going to be completely uncensored tonight.
Only a fool would think that was a legitimate...
You think I'm a fool?
I do now, yeah.
You can say it, we'll bleep you.
I came to my senses and kicked the...
That doesn't mean to me. The guy's been doing the same effing part for 35 years.
I kind of only came on here because I thought it would be kind of funny, but I want to say you're...
Don't bother me anymore, just the off.
How about if you do fight again, you have to give me £1 million? How about that's a deal? If I asked you what a woman is, what would you say?
A human being with boobs. You have to start there.
I've been trying to work out how much money you must have made from American Pie.
If everybody that knows that song came to my shows, I'd be selling out stadiums.
We have another several billion years, so don't, if you're going to prioritize...
Well, that's all right.
Forgive me if I look a bit sweaty and moist. The girlies apparently like it that way.
No problem with the tits?
No problem with the tits. No, tits aren't really involved in this.
The words you're looking for, Stanley. Oh, thank you, Piers.
Interview adjourned. Love you.
Turn the camera off. Very dishonest.
President Trump, well, first of all, how are you?
Very good. We're doing well, and it's nice to be in Florida. We're sort of all over the place, but a lot of time spent in Florida.
What is life like as an ex-president?
Well, it's interesting. It's beautiful. It's complex sometimes. We have a lot of endorsements going out and have gone out. We've done very well on endorsing candidates that I think are very good, and they are very good. And we've taken people from who were not going to win, and now they're winning big. You're talking like somebody who feels he has unfinished business. Well, we did a really good job. We created an economy that was incredible, and now supply chain problems, inflation problems, gasoline selling for $5, $6, $7. Think of it, a gallon. When I left, it was under $2, and it was largely under $2 for a long period of time. $1.87, $1.67 at one point, and now it's $5, $6, $7, $8, depending on where you are, going up much higher. And we have a war that would have never happened if I was president. That war would have never happened. When the invasion started, you were quite praiseworthy of Vladimir Putin. You said he was a genius. This was a savvy move. No, he was going in as a peacemaker. No, that's the fake news' version, no. Tell me the truth. When he built up soldiers on the border, I said, that's very smart, brilliant move, because I thought he was negotiating. When he went in, I said, no longer a brilliant move. When you see the scenes, Mr. President, of maternity hospitals being bombed, I think it's terrible, yeah. When you see refugees being attacked as they flee, grandmothers, children, babies, you see the decimation of previously prosperous cities living in a thriving new democracy. When you watch what's happening, I mean, do you agree with my assessment that Vladimir Putin is now an evil, genocidal monster? Yeah, but I also... You do? When I look at it, I do, sure. Who wouldn't? What's happening is horrible. When you see rockets going into apartment buildings, and there are plenty of people in those buildings, you know, they think they're like the people who moved out. They didn't move. They want to stay because they think they're safe in their apartments. Far more people are dead than you think. When I see all the death and all that destruction, and it's such a stupid war, because you had a country that was working, had problems, lots of problems, but other countries have problems too. It was such a horrible waste to be doing it. You see swings outside, you see playgrounds, you see hospitals. It was a country. And the people were happy. I guess a lot of them were happy because they're certainly fighting for it. But I'll tell you what I really think. I say, isn't it a shame all those people are dead, all because of a rigged election? Because if our election wasn't rigged, you would have had nobody dead. When you said to Putin, don't invade Ukraine, what was his response? Well, I told him what our response was going to be, and his response was, really? I said, really? What did you say your response was? And you know what? If he believed me, good, but if he believed me only 5%, he would have said, I'll never do it. What did you say the response would be? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that, but it was a very strong response. But did you threaten to use, for example, the nuclear capability? I don't want to talk about it. As he's been doing? I don't want to talk about that. What I did say is, we're going to be very strongly responding if you do that. I also said to President Xi, don't go into Taiwan. And there's going to be a very strong response. They both understood that. They both had the same reaction. Really? Really? I said, really? The thing that may keep him out of Taiwan is how poorly Russia's doing,
right,
and how vicious it has to be, how horrible it has to be, because China sees that and nobody wants to see what's happening.
So what would you do right now in Ukraine if you were the president?
Putin uses the N-word. I call it the N-word. He uses the N-word, the nuclear word, all the time. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. He uses it on a daily basis. And everybody's so afraid, so afraid, so afraid. And as they're afraid, he uses it more and more. That's why he's doing the kind of things he's doing. He's doing them because he thinks nobody's going to ever attack us because they're all stupid and they're afraid to talk about it.
I totally agree with you.
Okay?
So what would you do
about that? And instead of, excuse me, it's a little complicated.
I'm sorry.
Instead of, kowtowing, instead of Biden saying, oh, he's got nuclear weapons. He keeps saying he's got we have better weapons. We have the greatest submarine power in history.
So what would you say and do?
I would say we have far more than you do, far more powerful than you, and you can't use that word ever again. You cannot use the nuclear word ever again. And if you do, we're going to have problems.
My reading of what you've been saying is that when you were talking to Putin, when you were president, and he was talking about potentially invading Ukraine, that you threatened him with your nuclear capability.
I threatened him like he has never been threatened before.
Did you threaten to use nuclear weapons?
I don't want to say that. I threatened him like he has never been threatened before.
What's your message for Putin now, right now? If you could talk to him, what would you say to him?
I would say it's a shame what you've done. You're killing, I think potentially, look, if these people aren't smart, and they're not, our leaders are not smart. If they're not smart, you're going to end up in a nuclear war. This is just the beginning. This is the beginning. And I've been the best predictor of things ever. Now, it doesn't have to happen. It shouldn't happen. But if our people aren't smart, you're going to end up in a nuclear war.
So what's your message to him?
I think they're dealing with...
If he's watching this interview, and he will be,
look,
what would you say to him?
I think they're dealing with him incorrectly. I think what they're saying, it's almost like they're speaking with fear. And they don't understand. We have one weapon alone that would destroy everything.
The things I'm not happy about with your presidency, I'll be completely straight with you, to your face. One of them is what happened on January the 6th, which was a result of you refusing to accept the result of the election.
Before you start this, look, Nancy Pelosi is in charge of security. She didn't do her job.
She's half in charge of it. So the Republicans
the mayor of D.C.
and the Democrats have equal share of that.
The mayor of D.C. and Nancy Pelosi are in charge
Actually,
of
the Republicans and the Democrats have 50-50. But she was actually cowering for terror in fear of her life that day because there was a huge mob of people who were attacking the centre of democracy in America. If you talk the talk, and you're a great talker, I've seen that today, if you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. In the context of your claim about the fraudulent election, it's been 14 months and we've not seen this hard evidence of the fraud that you say happened.
The press won't report it. The press...
You haven't produced
This is like a communist country.
Where is the proof?
It's all over the place. We have
it's not,
so
I've read
much...
everything. Can I just put another thing to you? Because I've watched this whole debate rage and you've been completely unflagging in your refusal to accept defeat. And
you know why, though? You know why? Because if our country doesn't have fair and free elections, and if our country doesn't have borders, we don't have a country.
Okay.
We have crooked, corrupt elections.
But here's what I would say to you.
And I've proven it.
Here's what I would say to you. I believe it was a free and fair election and that you lost.
You don't really believe that?
That's my belief.
All right. Well, then you're a fool.
However...
Then you're a fool.
Maybe I am a fool. Maybe I'm the fool in this conversation about it.
And you're a fool and you haven't studied it.
Okay, I have studied it. Here's the big question for you. Are you going to run again?
Well, for reasons of campaign finance and everything, I'm not allowed to say. But let me just say this. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
So you are going to run?
I love our country. Our country is going to hell. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
So you're going to run?
I'm not going to say that, but I think people are going to be happy. You might even be happy.
If it's you against Joe Biden, if you win the Republican nomination again, and he runs again, would you beat him?
I believe right now, I think you could beat him right now. Look,
despite being a fool.
They've done a very poor job. I don't have to say anymore. They've done a very, very poor job. Our country's a mess. Our country has never been so disrespected. Our borders have never been so open. We've never had in 44 years inflation like we have.
If you run again and you win, which could well happen, and I think whoever the Republican candidate, right now, it looks like the Democrats are going to get shellacked in the midterms. It's quite likely whoever is the Republican nominee will end up being president. It could be you again. And for as many people who think that's a great idea, you'll know there are lots of people who think that would be a total nightmare.
Far less.
Far less?
I think so, yeah. I think far less. I think people are very angry at this country. They're very angry at our leadership. They wish they had their vote to do again. We didn't need their vote because, again, we won the election by a tremendous margin. We won the election actually very easily.
I haven't mentioned.
That's it.
No, yeah. No, I realise that. I realise I'm not like.
Very dissent.
I just haven't asked you about.
You're a very dissent. This was a 20-minute interview.
Sorry.
Listen, this was a 20-minute
interview.
interview.
Don't you think?
I think it's fine. It's fine.
I haven't asked about.
It's fantastic in your opinion.
I wanted to end with the hole-in-one. I just haven't asked about the hole-in-one. Do you want to?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You recently got a hole-in-one playing golf with Ernie Els, one of the great golfers of the world. What was that like for you?
Well, it was great. He's a great guy, great player, one of the most beautiful swings, they say, in the history of golf, and very powerful. And I made it with him and actually 3 other tour pros, and it was quite a thrill.
Talk me through the shot.
Well, I hit the ball. It was hit well. It felt good. The wind was blowing hard into my face. It was a 5-iron that went 181 yards, and it went clank right into the hole. It landed on the green in one bounce, and it went clank. And Ernie, who's a low-key guy, one of the reasons he's acceptable, the Big Easy, right? But Ernie and the other pros started jumping up and down in the air. And I said, why are you guys so excited? He says, because we don't see hole-in-ones. They make, I guess, 1 every 3 tournaments, and then you have to be in the group. So it's rare.
Have you held one before?
I've had 7. This was the 7th.
7 hole-in-ones?
Yeah, 7. This was my 7th, which isn't that high a number, believe it or not. If somebody plays golf, I hear the record is 49. Okay, people.
Did you buy a round of drinks in the bar afterwards?
I don't know, but I would certainly have been happy to.
Well, you don't drink.
I don't drink. No.
It is traditional. You buy a round for everyone.
That is true. That is true.
Did you do that?
Probably happened. I didn't check, but probably happened because I own the club. I'm sure it happened.
Congratulations on the hole-in-one.
All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you for a great interview.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Turn the camera off.
President, First Lady, thank you both very much indeed. I want to ask you first, we're 5 months into the war, into the 6th month now. How are you both doing? How are you coping with this?
How are you doing?
How are you doing? Якщо я можу сказати.
Well, if I may say so, to be honest, I have this feeling as if it were one day. That is why when it was the 6th day, the 7th day of war, since that day I really have this feeling that all of this is one very long day.
Я не бачу, щоб сильно відрізнялось 5 місяців.
I don't really see the difference between 5 months or 6 months. The only difference is when we feel that at the battlefield the situation is stabilized. Or we know that at some points, in some positions, we are advancing. And I keep thinking about that. As you know, we are all human beings and we have to be strong. Sometimes we want to have someone close to be next to us, and that is what you miss in these moments.
Поблизу, поговорити, і ти за цим сумуєш, так, сумуєш.
Yes, I miss my children, I miss my wife. It is impossible to get used to it. Everything else you can get used to.
Іншого можна звикнути.
These kind of situations, they can make or break a marriage. Is your marriage stronger, do you think, because of what you've gone through in the last few months?
What do you think?
Are you sure
But
that I have to begin to answer?
You prefer?
Okay. Yeah, okay, I will. I'm ready.
Я можу спочатку.
Oh, please.
Я завжди була прихильницею теорії, що
I agree with the theory that marriage gets stronger with challenges. I think in our case it would be the same.
станеться так само.
We have become more interested in each other. I think in our case it will be the same story.
Одне одному
We have got something else to say to each other.
Я дуже хочу.
That is why I want this challenge to make us more united.
Ще більше.
What do you think about it?
My answer wouldn't be different.
Mr. President, when this war started, that awful night back in February, you appeared very soon afterwards and made a video address, which you put out on social media. And I remember watching it in real time and being very moved by it. And it was really your decision to stay here in Ukraine and to encourage the people of Ukraine to fight for their country. Some leaders might have left. What made you stay?
Я по-іншому просто не міг би зробити.
Well, it couldn't have gone any other way because the president is a leader of its people. The people voted for me and the strength of our state. This is something that I have already mentioned, the strength of our state. This is consolidation. This is unity of our people. All of us together. The government, the people, the servicemen, people just want it started. They would go to the streets, they would stop tanks, other military vehicles, so the government had to stay in the center of the decision-making processes. It was very important to make sure that there is no informational chaos, because we cannot say that this intimidation works, because otherwise, they would say that their informational propaganda actually won, that the government would leave this is what they wanted. This chaos, because chaos is the weakness of the state. This is the weakness of institutions.
On a more serious note, the Russians, you're the number one target for them, and your family is the number two target. That must be a constant pressure for all of you.
Це не просто, коли ти думаєш про свою сім'ю. В даному...
It's not really about you thinking about your family. Yes, in this case, the family is at the center of attention, and yes, this is true. These targets still remain for some people from the Russian Federation. As far as I am concerned, I think it is a given. I think that it is a part of this situation we are in, and we are in a state of war.
And First Lady, for you as a mother, to know that the Russians are targeting not just your husband as president, but you and potentially your children, your family, for any mother, that must be a terrifying thought.
Я намагалась ніколи не думати про ці нумерації.
I tried never to think about these numbers of targets, because when you think in terms of target number 1, target number 2, if you think too much into it, then you can become really paranoid. And yes, I understand I'm a mother like many other mothers in Ukraine. That is why all Ukrainians are targets number 2. And of course, it's all unpleasant feeling. I don't want to think that they want to do this to our family.
What your people have been saying to me, I interviewed a father in Bucha whose son was tortured and murdered by the Russians. And he was very emotional. And when I suggested to him, how would you feel if your president did a deal with Russia? He said, no, 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 no. And I interviewed 2 young women whose apartment block was the last apartment block to be hit by a cruise missile a month ago. The same reaction, instant. No deal.
They hate.
Yes.
They hate, and it's understandable.
Yeah.
When so many families lost,
yes,
for example, their neighbors, their children, what the deal? So what the result of this deal? Could Russia or can Russia give a child back? No. That's why they say no. So there are no emotion, only one emotion, hate.
What is your view of Vladimir Putin, the man who is leading this war?
It is difficult to put it into words. It's not possible to understand how one crooked idea can throw the whole of mankind into the medieval ages. I really don't have words. And I really don't want to say anything aloud, because normal words don't exist to describe this.
Mr. President, he is your enemy in this war. He's the leader of Russia. They've been doing despicable things to your people, bombing maternity hospitals, committing war crimes, no question, torturing people, murdering them. What is your view, your opinion of Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's clear, and as you have mentioned, he is enemy number 1 in this war. It seems to me the scariest thing about it is that he is in fact sane, and he understands what he's doing. I'd say that's the scariest conclusion I can make, that he understands what he's doing. He knows how many people he kills. He knows how many people were raped and by who, and the number of children killed or deported. Therefore, I only understand one thing. The world allowed this situation to develop. It allowed such a person to emerge with that ideology and attitude towards people. The world should understand that this result, this mistake to allow this situation, is the responsibility of the whole world.
Do you believe he would ever use a nuclear weapon, Putin?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what his aims are. I don't know what the civilized world allows him to do, because if it shows its weakness, he will use everything.
Do you believe you can win this war?
Yes.
No question.
I don't only believe it, I know it will happen. We will win. We already showed the whole world that he can kill us. But to conquer our people is impossible.
First Lady, is it true that he didn't tell you that he was going to run for president?
Say true. Say true.
Well, he forgot.
You forgot? You forgot to tell your wife you're running for president?
He understood that probably I wouldn't have been fond of this idea and that it would take a couple of hours of very difficult negotiations with me. That is why probably each day he was thinking that this is the day, that this is the moment, I should tell her, you know, but he kept postponing it. Then it was on TV. I saw his New Year's address. It was New Year's night and found out he was actually running.
Wait a minute, you found out on TV? Really? Mr. President, really? You announced it on television before you told your wife?
I was not laughing so much, so loud last 5 months.
This is TalkTV.
Well, Jordan Peterson joins me now. Jordan Peterson, welcome.
Thank you.
To Piers Morgan Uncensored. I suppose my first question, and there will be people genuinely wanting a simple answer, but there's a bigger answer too. Who is Jordan Peterson?
Well, I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor, and I'm doing that on a broader scale now, I suppose. But it's an extension of what I've done since 1987, really. I mean, I taught the same things I'm teaching, although I've expanded them all throughout my academic career, and my classes were very popular, and not popular exactly. The students found them extremely useful.
Why have you become so notorious? Because I look at it as, I've actually watched a lot of your lectures. Mm-hmm. I've listened to hours of you and Joe Rogan talking about stuff. I don't see the devil that some people try and portray you as at all. And it seems to me the one thing we may share in common is certainly not intellectual prowess, where unfortunately I'm many yards behind you. But what we do share, I think, is that a lot of people seem to have drawn an opinion about us based on either what they've seen in a tiny clip, taken out of context a lot of the time, or what they've been told to think about you by other people.
Yeah, well, that's some of it. I mean, I got tangled up in a political controversy in Canada. I mean, tangled up. I put my foot in it to some degree because I wasn't very happy with what I regarded as government overreach in relationship to who is in possession of my tongue. And I decided a long time ago, and really a long time ago, that I was going to say what I thought, and sort of independent of the outcome. You know, often people craft their speech. You know, I could have come here on your show, for example. I spent half an hour thinking, well, what do I want out of this show? But I don't think like that. I wanted to come here and have a conversation.
Ultimately, what is your goal? What is the point of Dr. Jordan Peterson? What do you hope to achieve through what is now huge global fame?
I hope to encourage people. Other than that, I want to see what happens. You know, I want to say what I believe to be true as clearly and carefully as I possibly can. And I want to see what happens as a consequence. And what people don't understand about that in some sense is your happiness, the purpose of your life is not going to be happiness. Sometimes it is. Sometimes that will come. But there will be difficult periods in your life, and happiness won't suffice then. But what you can have in your life is an adventure. You can have an adventure. And the truth is the best adventure. There's no doubt about that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is you don't know what's going to happen if you say what you think. Now, I don't mean incautiously, and I don't mean provocatively or any more than necessary. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's very adventurous. But also, if it's you and your voice, then it's your adventure.
A weird thing happened about 2 weeks ago. I was on Instagram and suddenly up popped this picture. And it was you with a friend of mine, Cristiano Ronaldo, the football genius, greatest player to ever play the game as far as I'm concerned. And you'd been to see him just privately. And he was saying how great it was that he'd met you and you'd gone there. And all hell broke loose. He was bombarded with people saying this is outrageous, legend over, legacy finished, none of which would have bothered him because he'd heard all this kind of thing before. But the venom of it was from certain quarters was so pathetic, it seemed to me. So first of all, what were you doing with Cristiano? Why were you there?
Well, he invited me to come and see him, and he had had some trouble in his life a few months ago, and a friend of his sent him some of my videos, and he said he had watched those, and then he read my book, one of my books, and found them very helpful, and he wanted to talk. So I went out to his house, and we talked for about 2 hours. And he showed me all his equipment for keeping himself in tip-top condition, and we talked a bit about his companies, but mostly we talked about what he wanted in the future and some of the obstacles that he's facing while pursuing that. And so we had a strategic conversation, I would say.
Were you, in a way, the Ted Lasso figure in his life?
Well, that's what it felt like.
He didn't realise he was missing?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe he did realise that he was missing it because he seemed to have found it to some degree in those lectures. And so, and I always like to hear not only what people are up to, but what they want. And one of the things I loved about my clinical practice, which was very much predicated on this, like, well, you're miserable, let's say, and not to say that he was, because he has a good life in many ways, but if you could envision a path forward out of your misery, let's say, to somewhere better, what would that look like? And it's not a question people ask themselves with enough depth. And then, having developed that vision, what are the strategies that might be put in place to make that more likely? And again, not in a manipulative way, but if you had to conduct yourself in the proper manner to bring about this desirable end, or at least to move towards it, how would you organize your behavior?
When someone like Cristiano, who, you know, we know what the personal problem was. He'd lost a baby. He and his partner was incredibly sad for him. And professionally, after that, a lot of turmoil as to whether he was going to stay at his club and so on and so on. It seemed to me, talking to him in the last couple of days after he saw you, he's in a much better place, actually.
That's what happens when you hang out with a reprobate like me.
Yes, but really interesting to me that so you and he both got criticised for just seeing each other, but actually it was clearly very helpful to them.
Well, I hope so. That would be lovely if it was true.
I couldn't really get my head around why so many young people feel so anxious all the time, compared to when I was young, when that wasn't really a big thing amongst my friendship group, certainly. But I reckon it's two things. One, social media. The constant bombardment of other people having a great time or looking great, often a false imagery, and having to live up to false ideals. But also a conversation I had with Dr. Phil in America, where his explanation for it was that he said, you've got to understand that social media means that young people now are being bombarded all day long and all night long with quite shocking imagery. And he gave an example. He said, when I was young, he said, if a crocodile ate somebody on a golf course in Florida, the chances are I would never have heard about it. It probably wouldn't have made the national news, probably wouldn't have even made the state news, and I wouldn't have heard about this incident. Now, it's quite likely that a video of the crocodile eating this person would be whipping its way around social media within half an hour, and young kids would be sharing it, disseminating it, and being exposed to this constant imagery all the time of quite unsettling and shocking imagery. What do you think of that theory? And I think that in itself was adding to a sense of everything's terrible.
Well, I think it's a corollary of an information overload theory, right? I mean, one of the advantages to having the computational power we have is that everything is at your fingertips. And the disadvantage is that everything's in your face. And by everything, it might be 40 million pornographic images. Like, that's a lot. Or an endless array of tragic scenarios. And really endless. And so that's a problem. And the fundamental problem is, how do you handle the fire hose of information? And no one really knows the answer to that. But we should also point out that it's no wonder that young people are demoralized and anxious, because we're doing everything we can to demoralize them and make them anxious. So on the masculine front, we tell young boys that, well, the world's a terrible patriarchal tyranny, and all of that patriarchal tyranny, which is the whole explanation for history, has done nothing but oppress and exploit people and destroy the planet. And so that any manifestation of that masculine impulse on your part is equivalent to the world-destroying force.
Well, all masculinity now is branded toxic.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think the key moment for me came when Gillette, who'd always had these very masculine commercials with the big guy cuddling a baby or whatever it may be, they suddenly switched gears and did a campaign where it started with a lot of Me Too imagery and basically the assumption that all men are awful until they can prove otherwise. And I predicted in a column this would be a complete disaster for them. And sure enough, $9 billion later, they did a screeching U-turn and went back to the big guy cuddling the babies. Because actually, two things I think about that. One, most men are not awful, actually. And secondly,
not all the time.
No, some men are, obviously. Some women are pretty awful. But not most of them. But if you try saying that and not getting cancelled. But I think also this thing that you've got into trouble about, which I don't understand why, that you believe that most women probably quite like their men to be strong and confident.
I don't believe that. All the data shows that clearly across cultural samples, and has for 50 years. Plus, everyone knows it.
Anecdotally, most women I know, I think, would absolutely agree. Why is it that you've been so vilified for suggesting something which is so palpably true?
Well, I think, first of all, that annoys narcissistic women no end. And it annoys people who think that there are no biological or cultural limits on how we manifest our behaviors. And also, it frightens a large number of women, because many women have never had a good relationship with anyone masculine in their life. And so the notion that they would need to establish a trusting relationship with a man, especially if he's also in something approximating a superordinate position, which is what they might like to find him maximally attractive, also implies that they're in some sense going to be under his sway. And if there's no trust there, well, that's absolutely terrifying. And I have some sympathy for that, because there are no shortage of women out there who've never had a positive relationship with anyone masculine. And so they're completely unable to discriminate between narcissistic power and compulsion and confident competence. And so because they can't distinguish that and they're afraid, they put all of that in the same category, which is something like the predator category. And that's not good for them because, well, as you said, all men aren't predators all the time. And they need to establish a relationship with a man.
What are your best traits and what are the worst traits of Dr. Jordan Peterson?
Well, I think that it's been difficult for me to optimally regulate my irritation at times over the last few years. And I'm trying to get that right, to figure out what the right, because a lot of things that have happened have outraged me. And then I'm not exactly sure what emotional tone to take as a consequence of that outrage. And that's a very complicated thing to figure out. And that's been exacerbated, that problem, by the fact that my family and I have been the targets of very conniving and attacks and underground attacks. And that isn't stopping. I mean,
another time when your wife was fighting a deadly cancer.
Yeah, and my daughter was sick, and so was I. So so it's very difficult to regulate your temper properly under those circumstances, let's say. And so I don't imagine.
Where have you most improved yourself, do you think, as you've got older?
I get better and better at listening, you know, and I'm better and better at finding my way forward with the words that I choose. And that's it's just a continual, in some sense, incremental expansion. Having met me now for an hour, what would your initial clinical diagnosis be? Well, you're probably optimally disagreeable for your profession, you know, because you can listen, but you're also not a pushover. And that's a very fine line, right? Because if you're too assertive or aggressive, then you get domineering. But if you're not enough, then you're a pushover. And the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people? Sure. Why not? You know, people have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice. It's making you emotional. Talk about that. Well, God, you know, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, like, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them.
Which things have annoyed you the most?
Family issues.
I want to talk about one in particular on that, which is when you were late back for the pre-season training. A lot of speculation because you'd said several weeks before that you wanted to play Champions League football and that you were maybe looking for another option because it didn't look like United would get to play Champions League.
Let's make my points. For example, the pre-season moment, and after you mentioned new clubs or the interesting. For example, the pre-season, I had a very, very bad, which is I don't say nobody. The people who surround me, they saw, friends and even my mom. I had some problems in vacation that my young daughter, they have a little problem. They have bronchitis, which is
bronchitis.
Bronchitis,
really?
Yes.
Your little baby, though.
Yes. I was in Mallorca in holidays and she stayed 1 week in hospital, which was, you know, you don't enjoy a lot the vacation.
And after what had happened, so worried.
Exactly. And the people make up histories that they say that I don't want to go travel. Piers, people have to understand that I'm a human being. I'm always going to be in my side of my family. I'm not negotiate nothing behind that. You understand? And I even have the lectures from the hospital, the feedback of the health of Bella, which is I'm not showing nobody. Nobody asked me. I keep for me. People forget that I'm human being, that I pass through a difficult moments.
Well, you must have been worried sick. I mean,
I was very worried.
You lost your baby son, and now your baby daughter's in hospital.
Exactly.
And you must have been absolutely.
I spoke with the directive and the president of Manchester United, and then kind of that didn't believe that something going wrong, which is make me feel bad.
Really?
Yes.
They didn't believe you.
They believe you, but in the same way they are there. I never is ever going to change the health of my family for the football. Never. Now or 10 years behind or forward. And it's something that really hurt me because they doubt of my words that I struggle, especially Bella and Gio. We had 1 week in hospital because the Bella have a big problem. And I didn't go to the pre-season because of that, because I didn't was allowed to left my family if something happened to do it the pre-season because I think it wasn't not fair to left my family for a pre-season. This is why I didn't go.
It seemed to me that right from the start, Ten Hag wanted to show you who the boss was. That he dropped you, he benched you, he mucked you around, he talked about you in the press. Were you getting that feeling? I mean, did you feel that?
The feeling, he always mentioned to me that I didn't need the pre-season, so I should wait for my opportunity. I really understand. I understand. But I'm not going to give you points, but he don't do it the same procediment to every players. I'm not going to mention players, but they don't do it the same way.
You don't have a good relationship with him?
I'm not mean good relationship. The empathy is not good, let's say.
Do you think he respects you?
I think he don't respect the way I should deserve. But it is what it is. This is why probably the game against Tottenham I left.
Well, I want to come to these two games. So against Manchester City, where United got destroyed, he didn't bring you on. He brought on other strikers, but didn't bring you on. And I felt insulted on your behalf. I was like, well, surely against Manchester City, if you're losing this badly and you've got the greatest player of all time sitting there, you at least give him some time, don't you?
Excuses. I see as excuses. Okay, you don't put me against Manchester City because of respect of your career, and you want to put me 3 minutes against Tottenham.
Well, that's the thing. So then you then play Tottenham.
Don't make sense.
And then he wants to bring you on with 3 minutes to go. He was deliberately provoking you.
Well, everyone know that.
Disrespecting you, you think?
Exactly. This is why I say I don't have respect for him because he don't show me respect for me. This is why we are in that situation. I have to be honest that the things don't going well because of that, because the empathy don't exist, and He keeps saying things for the press, but the press say what they think it's good to protect probably him and Manchester United. But I like guys that they don't lie, they speak honest, they be frontal. And I'm not negotiate my morals. My morals always will be intact.
And that seems to have been the pattern of the way Ten Hag has wanted to treat you since he became manager. Just constant attempts to disrespect you, I guess.
Many points happen. I think in some certain points, I think was strategy from the club for me to react like that.
Because they wanted you to leave?
Probably, yes.
They're trying to force you out, you think?
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around the club.
At the senior executive level?
Yes, that I felt betrayed.
And you think they're trying to get rid of you?
Honestly, I shouldn't say that, I don't know, but listen, I don't care, I'm always, people should listen the truth. Yes, I feel betrayed, and I felt that some people that don't want me here, not only this year, but last year too.
They didn't want you to go there at all?
No.
Really?
No. Yes. The owners of the club, they don't.
The Glazers.
The Glazers, they don't care about the club. I mean, professional sport. As you know, Manchester is a marketing club. They will get his money from the marketing. The sports, they don't really care, in my opinion.
Do you ever talk to them, the Glazers?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Not since you've gone back?
No. They give all the power to the president, the sport directive.
A lot of Manchester United fans are very negative about the Glazers. They think they're taking all the money out and not spending enough on players, on the infrastructure issues you talked about. Do you think the fans are right?
The fans, they're always right. I think the fans should know the truth, should know that the players, we want the best for the club. I want the best of the club. This is why I'm coming to Manchester United. This is why I love this club. But you have some things inside the club which don't help to Manchester reach the top level as City, Liverpool, and even now Arsenal, for example, which is complicated. It's difficult. It's hard. In my opinion, it will be hard for Manchester to be in the top of the game the next 2-3 years.
Do you feel like you need a fresh challenge?
I'm not saying if it's fresh challenge, but let's see. I cannot answer right now because my focus is for the World Cup. But I don't know. Maybe it's good for Manchester and probably it's good for me as well to have a new chapter.
What is the truth about other clubs making offers for you? Some people have said there were no offers at all. I happen to know that there was a gigantic one from Saudi Arabia. I mean,
for example?
Like 350 million euros for 2 seasons, is that the kind
true.
of...
Yes, it's true.
That's a staggering sum of money.
Yes.
Which you turned down.
In that moment, yes.
I mean, that to me says you're not just about the money.
I will be honest with you. I didn't have many clubs, but I have many offers of the other clubs, right. Which is I didn't change because I didn't plan to do it. But I have. But what the press keeping say and the garbage press say that nobody want me, which is completely wrong. And I was happy here, to be honest. I was motivated to do it, a great season here. But they continue to repeat. Nobody want Cristiano. How they don't want a player who last year scored 32 goals with national team.
I mean, that's the point I don't get, because there are people out there, and you see them, you hear them, and they say, well, he's not the player he used to be. As if somehow at 37 you're going to be as good as you were at 21.
Day by day we're getting old. Every one of us. You understand? It's normal. You have to adapt. And I think nobody in this game have this brain that adapts with his age. I'm not want to be cocky to say that I'm the same that when I was 20. Of course no. But I'm adapt and I be smart to know my strength, what I'm good to do. And I'm still playing the high level and I score goals and I will continue to score goals.
Cristiano, what a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Piers. It was a pleasure for me too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.